You open the model, $214. The number sits there, clear, clean, built from hundreds of assumptions that you personally checked, one by one. The market price is $191. The gap is not large, not the kind that makes you jolt, but enough. Enough to make you stop longer than usual. You look again at the revenue line. Not wrong. You check the profit margin again. Still not wrong. You go through every sheet, every link, every formula you built with your own hands. Everything makes sense. Everything is right, but something is off. Not in the number, but in the way you feel about that number. Something very hard to name. A feeling that does not fit. You know that if you send this note out, that number will no longer be anonymous. It will carry your name, not because it is big, but because it exists. And if it is wrong, then that error will carry your name too. You sit there longer than necessary, not to check again, but to delay. Just to ask yourself one very simple question. Why did you believe that being right was enough? You start at the bottom. No name. No one asks for your opinion. No one is waiting for you to speak. There is only the screen, the spreadsheet, and time. Cut into pieces by quarter. You no longer live by the day. You live by the earnings calendar. You wake up with transcripts. You sleep with footnotes. The tiny lines at the bottom of the report are the part you read most closely. Every day, you open the same model, the same company, but no 2 days feel the same. Because every time you open it, the pressure is different. Some days are light. Some days are so heavy you do not dare take your eyes off the screen. You read filings until the numbers stop feeling like numbers. They start to take on behavior. You begin to see the pattern. You begin to see the distortions. You begin to see the things no one says directly. You no longer look at a business through its products. You look through cash flow. No longer through the story, but through the way they tell that story. You wait for guidance. You wait for one sentence that drifts away from the usual trajectory. You wait for a pause. In the wrong place. You begin to notice even the things that are not said. You revise the model when everything around you has already gone quiet. No more emails, no more messages. Only the light from the screen and the lines of numbers. You learn not to trust any number until you have walked through it yourself, step by step, assumption by assumption, link by link. You believe in one very simple thing. You believe accuracy protects you. You believe that if you are precise enough, you will be safe. You believe mistakes only happen to careless people, and you are not one of them. You believe one more thing. You believe the system rewards truth. That if you find what is right, the system will automatically pull you upward. No need to say much, no need to perform. Just be right. Just be good enough. Everything you do revolves around those two beliefs. You work faster, you go deeper, you stay later. You ignore the things that do not matter. You optimize every small detail. And you begin to think you are getting closer to control. Everything seems to be moving in the right direction until there is a moment. One number, it does not match the pattern, it does not break the model, but it takes away your sense of certainty. A small detail, but it does not sit still the way the other numbers do. It makes you go back, look again, and doubt. Not the model, but your own belief in that model. That is when the system reveals itself. You look at that number one more time, not to check it, but to understand why it makes you not believe. And this time, you are no longer looking at the number itself. You are looking at the way the system operates around that number. And you realize something. This system does not run the way you once thought it did. The system does not reward accuracy. It rewards usable conviction. You can be right. You can build a perfect model, something no one can pick apart. But if no one acts on it, then it does not exist. No one remembers it. No one mentions it. No one needs it. In this system, being right without being used amounts to nothing. The system does not pay for truth. It pays for influence. A note does not have value simply because it is right. It has value when it makes someone do something, buy, sell, hold, change their position. If no action happens, your truth has no weight. The system does not remember effort. It remembers calls. The thousands of hours you spend inside the model will disappear. No one sees them. No one acknowledges them. But one right decision at the right time will stay. Not because it is deep, but because it happened at the right moment. That is how the system filters, not by absolute accuracy, but by the ability to create impact at exactly the right time. And every time you are pulled a little higher, you think you have more power, but in reality, you are only trading one kind of constraint for another. You start at the bottom. You have money. Not a small amount. You have speed. You learn fast, faster than many people around you, but you do not have a voice. You touch the model, but not the decision. You are not paid to have an opinion. You are paid not to get it wrong. A small mistake is not a mistake. It is an event, something that can spread. You work so that you are not seen, not so that you will be seen. At this level, you have income, but you do not own anything, no authority, no influence, no trace. And then, one time, you see something someone else missed, a small detail. It does not fit, it does not make noise, but it is enough to change the conclusion. You do not speak immediately. You check again, and then check again. And when you finally send it, for the first time, the system looks back at you. You begin to be pulled closer. You are no longer standing outside. You hear things directly. You see more. You understand things that before you could only guess at. Your name appears, small, at the bottom, but it is there. You are no longer only processing data. You begin to touch the way data is sent out into the world. And then, you realize something. Not everything you know is allowed to appear. You write a note. Everything is ready. The logic is clear. The number is clean. The argument is solid enough. But you do not send it. You stop. Not because you doubt it, but because you understand. If it goes out, it will touch other things. Timing, a relationship, a meeting that is being arranged, a deal that is not finished yet. You keep the cursor over the send button longer than usual. Not for a few seconds, but long enough for you to start thinking differently. At this level, you begin to understand something you had never clearly seen before. Knowing what is right does not mean you are allowed to say it at the right time. And when your name appears, what increases is not just the money, it is the risk attached directly to your identity. You begin to have your own coverage. People know you. Not everyone, but enough. They call you, not to ask what you think, but to ask what they should do. You are no longer only analyzing. You begin to influence. Small, but real. And from there, the game changes. You are no longer measured by how much you know, but by how usable what you say is to other people. An insight that cannot be acted on has no value. You begin to learn how to speak differently, not to be more correct, but to be clearer, shorter, more memorable, and better timed. You begin cutting away what is unnecessary. You begin packaging. Not to protect the truth, but so the market can digest it. At this level, the truth no longer stands on its own. It has to come with the ability to be used. But once you have a voice, a new problem appears. You realize your voice is not entirely yours. It always sits inside a larger frame. You stand in a leading position. Your name becomes a reference point. One call from you can move flows of capital. One thing you say can make someone change a decision. You begin to feel the weight of that, but at the same time, you are constrained by the very thing you built. You have to maintain your presence. You have to maintain being remembered. You have to hold your place. You realize something very clearly. Ranking is not the asset. Attention is the asset. Ranking is only evidence that you are being noticed, and if attention disappears, ranking disappears with it. You begin managing that, not through analysis, but by showing up at the right time, in the right place, to the right people. You stay in touch. You maintain the rhythm. You are not allowed to disappear. There are moments when you see something important, a detail that could change the entire frame. You know that if you say it, it will create a reaction. But you also know it could close other doors. A phone call, a relationship, a source of information. You stop. Not because you are unsure, but because you understand the cost. At this level, you are no longer only analyzing companies. You are managing your own position, and the question changes. It is no longer about right or wrong. It becomes, where do you stand inside that system? You go higher, everything becomes clearer. More money, more influence. But the conflict does not disappear. It only becomes harder to see. You have two obligations. One to the people who use your information. One to the system that pays you. Most of the time they move in the same direction. You do not have to think much about it. But not always. And when they pull apart, everything becomes quiet. No one says anything directly. No one asks. There are only very small signals. A question about timing. A meeting with no agenda written down. A look. And you understand. You have to choose, not between right and wrong, but between two different kinds of right. You preserve your credibility by doing what has to be done, but every time you do, you may damage something larger, a structure, a relationship, a stream of revenue. At this level, integrity does not disappear, it becomes a cost. And you are the one who pays it, no one sees it, but you know. Then you are no longer the one writing. You are no longer the name on the page. You are no longer the one speaking. You are the one building the system. You hire people. You decide who gets to speak. You read everything before it goes out. You stand between two sides, information and interests. You do not appear. Your name is not on any line, but everything passes through you. And you realize one final thing. At the highest level, power is not in being seen. It is in deciding who will be seen. You lose presence, but you control the conditions that allow that presence to exist. Very few people know you, but a great deal depends on you. Here, there is no longer right. There is no longer wrong. There is only structure. And when you look back across the entire path, the pattern begins to show itself. You look back from the beginning, from the place where you had no name, to the place where your name carries weight. You think you move forward, but in reality, what changed was not your position, it was what you had to serve. At every level, you think you are gaining control. You are not. You are just changing who you answer to. At the bottom, you answer to the person above you. You optimize not to be wrong. You exist to keep the system from breaking. A little higher, you answer to access. You begin to weigh things. Not because you do not know, but because you understand the consequences too well. When you have a name, you answer to client memory, not to how often you are right, but to whether they remember you being right at the right moment. You become part of how they make decisions. You do not control the outcome. You only control the chance of being called again. When you lead, you answer to ranking, to attention, to whether you still remain in the market's mind. You begin feeding the thing that once fed you. Not through analysis, but through presence. When you move higher, you answer to something more complicated. Revenue, accuracy. The two often move together, but not always. And every time they drift apart, you have to choose in silence. At the highest level, you do not answer to one person. You answer to an entire system, something with no single name, but always there and always carrying weight. That is the pattern. No level sets you free. There are only levels that change the shape of your constraints. You do not move upward to become free. You move upward to change the way you are controlled. And that is why what you believe about this path is wrong. You think working harder will take you out of the system. It will not. Working harder just makes you faster inside the system. You process more, faster, deeper. But your position does not change. You only become more efficient inside the same frame. You think making more money will change your position. It will not. Saving money doesn't change your position. Income goes up, your balance goes up, but you are still selling the same thing, your judgment, inside a structure you do not control. You think climbing higher will bring you freedom. It will not. Climbing only moves you deeper into the same game. You go deeper. You understand more clearly, but you are also bound more deeply. Not because you are weak, but because you have become a more important part of that system. The problem is not that you have not tried hard enough. You did it right. You did enough. It is simply that you are inside a game that does not reward what you are optimizing for. And when you look long enough, everything starts to become simpler. Not easier, just clearer. You go back to the model, a new number, a new assumption, a new small distortion. Nothing changes, except you. You stop trying to always be right. You begin choosing when being right actually matters. You stop trying to be right. You start deciding when being right matters. At a higher level, you do not look for answers. You look for impact. Not every number is worth noticing. Only the numbers that can change behavior. You understand that, and you accept it. Not because it is fair, but because that is how the system works. You open the model again. Your name is still there. The number is still there. And the distortion is always still there. If you want to go deeper, stay. The next part is about the people who read what you write, find the gap inside it, and place a bet against you.